Hey YouTube, Dawson Ryder here. This is going to be my catch-up review for the Power Rangers Prime comic, covering issues 4 through 6, just my kind of bullet point thoughts on each issue, and then my overall thoughts. I honestly kind of fell behind on this, not because I wasn't enjoying it, because especially visiting these issues, I sounded like I was visiting a friend, but visiting these issues, I remembered how much I really loved this take on the universe. I think just a combination of when we had that gap and I got used to not reading comics week to week, and just not being in a PR mood allowed me to fall behind. I think I just forgot about issue 4, and then every time I remembered I needed to catch up, I just wasn't feeling it, so I decided to wait until I felt like it instead of forcing myself to read it. But let's go ahead and get into it. So issue 4 we pick up right after, well, technically we pick up with a flashback, but where we left off previously on Dawson Ryder Reviews, Cora's doing firebending. We ended last issue with Lauren getting her powers for the first time. We technically pick up this issue with a flashback about June. I'm going to call him June. I don't know if it's Jun. I've heard it both ways, I've heard it all ways, but for the purposes of this universe, he's called June, the half Eltarian, kind of highlighting his motivation and story, which we touch on later, which is torn between his Eltarian expectations and his own path and purpose and passion and all that stuff, and that is brought up again later. But we do pick up then with the action, and we primarily follow Lauren fighting the VR troopers, while the others kind of figure out what they want to do, and they eventually decide hey, we want to help become Rangers, and Rita transforms them all into Rangers, and then we end off with all of them transformed at the end. Speaking of, I really do like these suits. I know you have your typical MMPR complainers, but I think this is a perfect mix of being familiar, but something new at the same time, because it's going to draw in that larger casual audience. And same thing with the way they take advantage of the world here. I love that you have stuff like a half equation, you have Orion in there, you even have other little species we see at times like piggy species and stuff like that, because the casual reader that is maybe reading this comic that only watched MMPR is just going to think that's another alien. It's not like they're going to feel lost like they missed a chapter, but to us there's a rich history behind some of this lore, which I think is really neat. But I really just like the suits. I do have to say though, I feel like I remember when these first came out, somebody on Twitter or wherever I first saw it broke it down, and I'm not stupid, well I mean I am, but I feel like I can't 100% tell what each one is. I know red's a T-Rex, I think pink is meant to be a raptor, blue's clearly a unicorn, and black's meant to be a snake, right? I can't tell from the coin, because the coins have this weird spirally pattern that makes them look kind of samey. So red, blacks, and pinks all look kind of the same when you have an action shot, because it's just kind of a reptilian face with a coil around it. So I couldn't tell if black's supposed to be a snake, like a regular just rattlesnake, snake character, or a robot, a cobra. And then I think yellow's a bird. I just wrote down bird, question mark. I don't know. And I looked on the wiki, and I tried looking on Reddit, and I didn't see anybody that wrote it down, because I was just mainly confused about black and yellow. Probably going to be in the comments being you idiot, Dawson, black's clearly a bunny. Issue 5, we're then following the fight with the Rangers and the VR Troopers. It honestly just is so cool to see them bringing the VR Troopers and having them fight these MMPR-esque Rangers, and it's cool we're getting that spin-off comic, which I'll touch on at the end. I really hope, against hope, that maybe we could somehow incorporate stuff like Masked Rider and Beetleborgs at some point. I think that would be just so cool. And we get to see their weapons and kind of just highlight the suits a little bit more, which is neat. Probably one of my favorite moments was just when Rita was talking to Lauren about the challenge that she's going to face with this team, kind of highlighting every team member's different perspective. Blue's struggle, which we already talked about. I keep calling him Blue. June's struggle with being an Eltarian and his kind of passion about Power Rangers and his Eltarian expectations. I keep thinking he's blue because he's the color blue. Is that Power Rangers racism? But also there's a panel when he's talking to Valentina later where the way they draw his suit, it looks kind of bluish, and it was before I remembered who everybody was, because it had been so long since I read this. But anyway, actual Blue Ranger, Mark, you kind of have his confidence issues, which we touch on in the next issue. And then, of course, Valentina. I don't know why that name sounds so familiar to me. Something I've watched recently, I don't know if it's a movie or show, had the name Valentina in it. It just seems so familiar in my head when I was reading this. But she, of course, has the conflict because of her relationship with Ryan. And I really like the way this team is kind of built, in the sense that we kind of built up their team dynamic-ish in the first 3 issues, in the sense that they do have this kind of connection now and this camaraderie to a degree, but it's not perfect, so you don't have them kumbaya friendship braceleting it the first time, and you see that when Valentina and what's his name, June they run off, and then of course Mark gets kidnapped. So I like that it's kind of they have the setup there for the characters to become closer. It's not like they're fully strangers, but they're also not a best friend group that became Rangers. In issue 6, it kind of reminded me of an issue they did early in the original series run of the comics, focusing on Billy and kind of his insecurities and stuff, as it focuses on Mark and his backstory about how he survived, was the sole survivor of an equation attack, kind of what he had to deal with being half equation and stuff like that, and always being fearful, kind of inheriting that from his mother. There was a couple good lines in there. It was pretty cliche in terms of it's about overcoming your fears, but I thought it was effective. There was a line saying you're more than your fears. There was also a line that said fear is a constant companion. I'm you ripped that off from Doctor Who Series 8 Episode 4. Listen, I I think it was episode 4, but it's definitely from Listen. That was a line from Clara, because I read it in Clara's voice. But I thought that worked for me. He's kind of being interrogated by Ryan. I mean, he is. And he's kind of, I think in my opinion, was clearly trying to do like the good cop type of thing, like, we're on your side, man. And I don't know, I liked it because there was just kind of this building confidence in him, and when he finally sees his identity as Prime Blue and morphed. It was kind of funny though, because I thought he was going to escape, but he just morphs, kind of punches him a couple of minutes, and then gets knocked out. I think it's because they're probably going to have the team unite to rescue him next week. So yeah, overall, I thought these were 3 good issues. It is kind of funny how I kind of liked reading it binged more, because it felt like it was a long time that we got the Rangers, but it was only issue 4, but because you have to wait like a month or so between issues, it makes the pacing feel kind of weird. But I do like that they built up to it, and like I said, I really love this world and the lore, and that it takes advantage of existing Ranger lore. Bit of a weird comparison, I don't know why it's the first thing coming to mind, because comics do this all the time with the remix, but it kind of reminded me of how the Ben 10 reboot series, which, you know, wasn't the best, but I like how they kind of had the architecture of a reboot of the original series, but then they pulled in mythology from like Omniverse and Alien Force and stuff like that. And this kind of feels like that, whereas it's its own structure, but you're pulling in different things. And I like that the team is made up of kind of familiar-ish characters like Lauren and Orion, and the new characters, but they're also like intermingled with species we know, like Equations. It was funny because it kind of reminded me, in a way, the first 2 issues of reading the Power Rangers, I can't remember the name of it, Origins series or whatever it was called, the one where we got the origins for the emissaries, where there's just so much new stuff being thrown at me. It took me a while to digest all the characters and stuff like that. But I really like the way this world is built. I'm so curious, especially in the scenes in the museum where you see all the artifacts of like familiar morphers and stuff like that, what this world is in terms of, is it just some other alternate reality, which obviously we know it is, or is in any way its creation or the events of like the way the world works with the Altarians a result of Darkest Hour. I'm honestly fine either way. I love the big multiversal connection stuff, and I would love to touch upon that original world in some sort of event story at some point, and I think it would be interesting to find that out. However, honestly fine if it's just another alternate universe. It's kind of the choice between if this is going to be just like classic Ultimate Comics or new Ultimate Comics, because unless I'm misremembering it, the old Ultimate Comics just existed as a, hey, this is a story remix, but then the new Ultimate Universe comics for Marvel exist as a result of a chain reaction of stories all the way back from Secret Wars Time Runs Out, like, which is kind of crazy. But I'm fine either way. I think it would be interesting to explore if there is a connection to why the world is the way that it is based on Darkest Hour. However, I'm also fine with this just being its own world. Like, I don't want a world where this is erased. I would love to continue to explore this world where we have no limits. So yeah, still still really enjoying the series. I'm going to try to be more consistent with keeping up with it, starting with the VR Trooper standalone. I know there was just a Free Comic Book Day issue. I didn't get to go out on Free Comic Book Day, but when I get to read that, I'll probably do a quick video on that. But I'll definitely do a review for the VR Trooper standalone issue, and then I will try to keep up with the weekly, or not weekly, but more timely issue reviews. But what are you thinking of the series so far? Let me know in the comments as always. Until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell to get notifications for my videos. Dawson Ryder, signing out.